Society Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Dr. Susanne Bleiberg Seperson, and this is our first episode of a new podcast, Antisemitism and the United Nations and in Society on HMTV. My special guest, Bill Tinglin, author, activist, and amazing human being, will join me for a conversation about the fight against anti-Semitism and how he became involved. So let's start with some questions about your background. Bill, could you tell me a little something about yourself?
Sure. I'm Bill Tinglin. I'm a journalist, writer. I've always the author of 9 books, and more so on law enforcement and Holocaust initiatives and civil activities. I've always worked on endeavors in regards to the Holocaust. And I am very active now at the United Nations and with community developments with JCCs in regards to matters of civil causes such as the Holocaust. So that's what I do in making things right, in taking things not as they are or seeing things not as they are, but how they should be.
That's wonderful. And I'm thrilled to have come to know you through the United Nations, and you work there, which we will talk about. So what projects are you currently working on?
I'm the president of School News Nationwide and the Tour for Tolerance organization. And throughout the years, what I have done for more than 30 years, I've been working with the Holocaust survivors and taking them to school and African-American seniors, talking about the importance of atrocities and making sure that such atrocities of slavery and the barbaric act of murderous intervention that took place with the Nazis against the Jewish people and others never happen again. So the project that I'm working on now is an important project, and that is the teaching of Holocaust studies in our school system. A very important project in which we want every American to be able to have some knowledge of the Holocaust. Why? Well, Professor Elie Wiesel says, if we fail to correct the past, eventually it's going to repeat itself. So how do we prevent such atrocities from taking place again? Through education. So the project that I'm working on is really Holocaust studies, getting Holocaust studies in all the schools in our country, starting in New York.
I know that you are one of the co-authors, and we will get to this book later on, but the name of the book is One of Humanity's Darkest Hours, The Untold Story of the Holocaust. So we will talk about that later, but I can't let this opportunity go by because it is an excellent, excellent book. Let's see. So now, do you want to share with how you became involved with the UN NGO Committee End Anti-Semitism and Promote Peace, that's fighting anti-Semitism, and I am the chair of that committee, which is really how we got to know each other in large part. But how did you become involved with the UN?
Well, let's back up a little. I first got started with the Holocaust with meeting a wonderful lady. Her name is Sally Frischberg. About 30 years ago, we've met. I was doing a story on how African Americans through slavery, built Yonkers. Mm-hmm. In the process of that, I met this beautiful lady, Sally Frischberg. And everything became revolutionized at that time, wherein Sally and I became good friends, and we started to combining our efforts in bringing Holocaust survivors to schools, places of worship, and other civic organizations in which she would go up and speak. My name is Sally Frischberg. I'm a Holocaust survivor. And as she starts, the room gets quiet. In the interim, Susanne, we developed a system in which we wanted to work with the Shure Foundation. Mm-hmm. And instead of bringing Holocaust survivors to schools, we developed a system in having a retroactive bus filled with interactive technology, holograms, working through the Sure Foundation. But COVID-19 came in and shut us down.
Yeah.
So we didn't really get off the ledge as we wanted to. But we continued to do our work, and now here we are again.
There we go.
But with that project, Susan, we would have seen 75,000 students per year with our bus going from school to school. You know, it's a great project. It's a great project.
It sounds wonderful, and now we're post-COVID, thank God, so maybe it will pick up, and one of the things I've learned is things morph, things change.
Indeed.
And hopefully this will go on. So let me ask you more specifically, as a Black man, how did you become involved in Holocaust issues?
I believe that history connects us all. And the stories of oppression, resilience, and survival in both the African Americans and the Jewish communities share that deep parallels in my life. The lessons of the Holocaust is not just Jewish history, they're human history. So we all work together with my commitment to fighting racism in all forms naturally led me to engage deeply with the Holocaust Education Initiative.
That's terrific. Yeah. I'm just curious, how does your family, respond to all of your work in fighting anti-Semitism?
My family, they are extremely supportive. Having Holocaust survivors come to my house all the time, and we sit down and hear their stories. Yeah, it's a rather unusual moment in time. So yes, they have seen many Holocaust survivors came to my door. We sat, have meal together. So it's a privilege for us in having several Holocaust survivors in our homes. So yes, it's more of an appreciated value of people and their interest. And some other people just don't appreciate that value because they want to see other understanding and act accordingly to other concepts. But education is so important. And being a student of Holocaust survivors, it's more than an opportunity, it's more than a privilege.
Thank you for that. I will say, as the daughter of 2 Holocaust survivors, I've found that for me, it's so meaningful to talk with people who are not Holocaust survivors and yet share the sentiments that people should be treated with respect, with dignity, and so on. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about the wider community, whether I know you're from Brooklyn, the Brooklyn community, the New York City community, and beyond, because of what we're hearing now and we're seeing on TV with all the schools and the universities, and frankly, even in elementary schools sometimes. How do you account for that disconnect between what we know is right and what we see happening all around us?
Interesting question. Many people in my community deeply respect and support my work, but others may see, based on misunderstanding the concept of slavery, the Holocaust, and other atrocities in Rwanda, what taking place in Cambodia, where millions have died. My responsibility with Holocaust survivors is to unite the forces of what took place. See, Susanne, the advantage that we have today is that Holocaust survivors are still alive. So we capitalize on that strength. Why? Because we're able to take them from school to school, from place to place. That person lost 12 members of their family. That Holocaust survivor lost 15 people, 20 people, whole family. One survived just to tell the story. That is so important in this lifestyle, in this life of ours today. Why? Because we are able to educate others to say, I've been there, my family were all lost, and now I'm able to do something about it. So African Americans, many African Americans educators, including myself, teachers, Holocaust survivors, we have logged our time and interest together in going to different places, sharing the importance of tolerance, empathy, compassion, inclusion. So it's no longer a job. For us, it's a must, it's a duty. That's where we are.
Well, I love those sentiments, so I'm just going to share that post-World War II, when my parents came here, and there was almost a stigma, a shame, a reluctance, a reticence to talk about the Holocaust. And people would say, oh, leave that behind you, just focus on the present, on the future. So there really wasn't any open discussion of the Holocaust. I will tell you, as a child, I knew that, quote, something really bad happened. But the details, we don't want to upset you. We don't want to know, you to know. And it was honestly never discussed for many, many years. And then I'm not sure exactly what, and I was wondering what your thoughts are. What do you think changed that allowed the Holocaust to be an important topic for discussion? And I understand there's lots of disagreement, and for me, respectful disagreement is fine. Violence is not. So what do you think was the precipitating event that caused people's attitudes to change about discussing the Holocaust as a topic?
Let me share a quick story with you. When Sally was 8 years old, a child coming, she served 3 years in the attic, and her family. On her way to New York on the ship, she had a bunk. She was on top bunk, and the lady was at the bottom bunk. The lady wanted the top bunk. And Sally wanted Sally to come down to the next bunk. Speaking in Polish, she says, "You dirty Jew, if it was up to me, it would kill all of you." Sally said, a matron, an African-American woman came over to her, held her in her arms, and started rocking her. "Don't worry." Sally didn't speak English at that time, but she could interpret the strength and the energy that's coming from this African-American woman. "Don't worry, everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right." And Sally said she rocked her in her arms until they came to New York. Thereafter, Sally became a school teacher, couldn't speak a word of English. But thereafter, as time went on, she learned English, and she became a teacher at Fort Hamilton High School. Mm-hmm. Sally says that she got African Americans, Spanish, Asians, everyone together, and she came up with a framework to teach Holocaust studies. Here we have a confluence of people of all colors. So what am I saying? Bringing all that together to answer your question, why do we have these issues now? We grow and learn in two ways, crisis and wisdom. When we had crisis during the Civil Rights Movement, everyone got together. Our allies, the Jewish people, our lawyers, our teachers, they were there together. That's crisis. Now we have the opportunity to grow in wisdom. Why aren't we growing in wisdom? Why aren't we using education as a tool? Well, it appears that people prefer crisis than wisdom. So to answer your question, crisis brings change, and wisdom brings change. However, with the Sallys, with the Samuels, with people like myself and educators, we'll continue to work together to bring people together, harmonizing our strengths and weaknesses. Education.
Amen. I want to comment on crisis and wisdom because I haven't quite ever heard that connected phrase that way. But we do know that when people are in crisis or a critical event occurs, you must respond. But wisdom accrues slowly over time. And so sometimes it's harder to see that arc or to have that wisdom appear in your face and respond to it because people think, well, it's not right now. I can do it tomorrow. So you're absolutely right about the wisdom. So I'm just curious, what role do you see religion in terms of passing on the wisdom of the ages, playing in this? I know, and I am not saying anything about any religion whatsoever, because the ultimate foundation of all religions, and the last time I counted, there were at least 12 different religions. All of them start with the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you, or from the Hebrew, do not do unto others as you would have not. But there's been a decline in that. So where do you see the impetus for people to connect with wisdom?
Good question. Jennifer Teege, many of you may know Jennifer Teege. Jennifer Teege is a black woman out of Germany. Well, she's mixed. Her grandfather was the commandant for Plaslau concentration camp. He had his daughter by the name of Ruth. Ruth had a relationship with an African Nigerian student. Jennifer Teege was born in Germany. Jennifer, years after, was given up for adoption, so she didn't know her parents. But eventually, she went to Israel, and doing research, she was able to discover who her parents were.
Wow.
And she wrote the book, If My Grandfather Knew Who I Was, He Would Have Killed Me. Now here we have a mixed woman from the daughter of a concentration camp leader who now came to herself, and she's now a lecturer. She was giving a speech. I brought her to New York, and she was giving a speech. And she said, Susanne, what we are lacking today is empathy. Empathy is gone. The restoration of empathy comes from leaders, the clergy. They're all put the interest on one specific thing, the word love, such as love your neighbor as you love yourself. But sometimes loving your neighbor as you love yourself, self takes over instead of the godly principles of love. So going back to Jennifer Teague's word is, man lacks empathy. Religion or religious leaders also lack the empathy in staying up or staying forth with the principle while they're religious leaders. Why? Teaching God's word, love. They remove themselves from love and take up other ideologies, the self-ideology. So the question is, why is there such separations and lack of clarity? Two things. The religious leaders failed to do God's work as servants to Him. And the other thing is education. We failed to educate ourselves and others. So yes, religious leaders, they are faulted. Yes, religious leaders are not doing enough to educate the populace, because they are leaders.
I have a whole series of questions, and I just want to tell the audience that I know we're not going to get through all of the questions, but I want to start. And the reason this brings me to is the role of institutions. We started with clergy, with religion, but clearly the attitudes that prevail now and that we see on the TV screen at universities in particular, taking over campuses and screaming all these epithets and horrible things from my point of view. There's so many different institutions that I would argue are failing. We could start with the schools, the politicians, we said the religious leaders, the cultural leaders, the music industry, Hollywood, sports figures, the social media. Where would you start? Any place you want in that long list. What do you think they could and should be doing?
School and universities in my opinion, must teach Holocaust history, critical thinking skills to combat anti-Semitism and hatred. Politicians should lead with integrity, condemning hate unequivocally, period. Religious leaders, going back to them, have a moral duty to foster unity and reject extremism, which is important. Cultural leaders, music industry, and Hollywood must promote responsible storytelling, avoiding narrative that spreads hate. Sports leaders, we believe that they should use the platform to promote tolerance. Not able to do that cause intolerance. And for example, soccer players in Europe are playing sports. We have a large audience they're calling the black players monkeys, bananas. Go get your bananas. Now, you may have seen this sometimes on national television. They are, particularly in India and Spain, they are developing a new system to tolerate or to eradicate such behavior. If certain segments on the stadium is creating havoc or using such words, automatic ejection and revoked their tickets from coming to that arena. This is one area of responsibility, and I believe, in which sports leaders can take the initiative to eradicate and to arrest certain behavior. The social media is also an important piece. It should be controlled, in my opinion, although we have a First Amendment. Yes, social media, they spread deep hatred among others, particularly teenagers. So yes, there's a responsible form in which we should be more responsible in that platform.
I just want to address the sports area because that's an area I probably know the least about. So this was fascinating to me that the sports league itself would come up with rules of appropriate behavior. And frankly, that should come from the political leaders, the sports leaders, the Olympic leaders. Every few years they have the Olympics, every 2 years now. This is something they could totally set the right example. But one of the things, at least my own theory, one of the things I believe is that, as you said, people respond to crisis. And that for organizations, the lifeblood of these events, whether it's Hollywood or sports or whatever, is money. So if, in fact, the money was threatened to be withheld, then I think the leadership would be forced to respond in an appropriate moral way, and the players would follow suit, and the audience would follow suit. But it really gets back to your first point of leadership and wisdom. And I know that we're coming to the end of our first segment, and we'll pick up where we left off. But from where we are at this point, what do you think you would like to be the takeaway from those people who have listened to you today, to us today? What would you like to have them remember before we continue in our second part?
I stood on the blood-soaked ground in Bogdanovka, in Ukraine, where 54,600 Jews were massacred in such a short period of time. 127 survived. The youngest Holocaust survivor is Samuel Baikov. Together, we are working in propagating the full interest on the importance of forgiveness, the importance of empathy, the importance of compassion, the importance of tolerance. The takeaway is this: together, we can work as one. Independently, you for you, causes separation, divided we fall. So the takeaway is getting back to one fundamental thing: education. I have the instrument to educate the entire America. It's called one of humanity's darkest hours. It's the first of its kind in the world. It's interactive. It's filled with technologically advanced chat box. The book becomes alive in your hands. You could hover your phone over it and ask the chat box any question, and it answers it.
Thank you. If
yes.
I may, because of time, I will just say thank you for tuning into this episode of Antisemitism and the United Nations and in Society on HMTV. I appreciate my guest, Bill Tinglin, for sharing his insights on fighting anti-Semitism. Be sure to subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations. Until next time, make it our time. Take care and be well, and stay tuned for part 2 of our excellent conversation with the esteemed Bill Tinglin.